A nefarious evil god known as the Absolute has begun to destroy the Forgotten Realms, and while some gods are just now getting out of bed to stop them, Lathander has already sent his chosen cleric to shed light wherever the Absolute's darkness touches. His chosen will have to illuminate shadowy lies, burn away hordes of unclean undead, and blind all those who would stand against the forces of good. Of course, nothing is quite so straightforward, as the Golden Guardian needs to fix the illithid tadpole in his head while he's at it. Can it be done? Well, we got one way to find out, but first, the rules. No other party members, though temporary companions such as summons are a-okay. No respecking, no multiclassing, no illithid powers, no karmic dice, no barrelmancy or chestmancy, no saving in the middle of combat, and we're playing with the honor mode rule set, so we'll be keeping it that way. With all that said, let's move on to character creation. Since our champion is made in the image of the glorious sun, he is of course a golden dragonborn, with our class of choice being, as you could no doubt guess, a light cleric of Lathander, meaning we get the very powerful warding flare alongside our usual cantrips and domain spells, giving the ability to impose disadvantage on the vast majority of attackers. Continuing with our divine blessed theming, we are also an acolyte for our background, and our stats and skill proficiencies end up looking like this, mainly focusing on wisdom and constitution so we can cast powerful spells and maintain concentration on them with a bit of dexterity to avoid getting clobbered. Last but not least, we make our powerful priest look grossly incandescent and give him a name to match. Midas Goldcrest has come to ensure the sun will rise another day. All has not gone to plan on Midas's journey, as it begins balefully with him having awoken after being kidnapped by mind flayers on a burning nautiloid. Setting out to find the helm of this ship and take control, we get interrupted by a fellow victim of the illithid interlopers, and seeing we're in the same situation, agree to team up to fight some imps in the way. Unfortunately, the glare shining off of Midas's golden bod gets in her eye and she slips right off the edge. No matter, we say a quick prayer for her, and it's easy enough for us to burn the imps to a crisp using the concentrated power of the sun. Let's just consider this armor a gift from God. Arriving at the helm intending to take control, we find a situation that is a little out of our purview for now. So we get skedaddling on over to the tentacles that make up the controls, fiddle around with them a wee bit, get our fire breath absolutely ratioed by an actual dragon, and teleport to relative safety, being saved by no doubt divine providence. And it's here our journey begins properly, in the wilderness. As Midas crawls to his feet, we begin exploring our surroundings with a guiding hand inching us in the right direction. The right direction, of course, being towards this beautiful hat, one that we can't help think looks truly radiant on us. Continuing onwards, we blow up a few intellect devourers, murky mind flayer, and wander around just a bit, giving enough XP to level up to level 2, which alongside giving another first level spell slot also gives our channel divinity, the generic one all clerics get, turn undead, and our subclass specific one, Radiance of the Dawn, a massive AoE ability that deals 2d10 plus our level radiant damage to all enemies, letting us decimate battlefields once per short rest. While looking around though, we find a camp full of desperate refugees and druids under attack by absolutists. Of course, Midas can't just stand by, so we jump into action. The goblins get swinging at our allies, Zevlor up top blows on this horn, giving all friendlies temp HP, and we use our breath weapon to, do that. Thankfully, first blood goes to Team Lathander, as does second blood too. And we forego the miracles and cleansing fire on our turn for just a bit in favor of shooting someone in the face. The next few kills go our way as well, and it's looking like this is pretty decisive, especially as we finally get close enough to a large group of enemies in order to blast them with radiance, leading to the fight getting cleaned up quick as can be without a single one of our people going down, unless you count Cannon. Heading inside, we find tensions are a little high between the druids and tieflings, maybe more than a little. But either way, we convince folks to stick around to help their clan, successfully get a crash course on every instrument known to dragonborn kind, meet a new friend by the name of Volo, who we sense is godblessed too in some way, save a child from a druid named Kaga that's giving some rancid vibes, and last but not least, learn about the archdruid Halsin, who's gone off to investigate the nearby goblin camp. That, however, is a later problem. For now, we head towards the goblin camp only to get jumped by Raphael, a powerful devil that tries to convince us to make a deal with him. But when we make it clear we'd rather blast him with the sun, he sends us back on our way. Thankfully, he's not the only company we find along the road, as we also meet Scratch, who sadly had his owner pass away at the hands of some foul creature. Currently, he's grieving, but we give the loyal hound our scent so he can find us at camp later on. And right next to him, we find more absolutists occupying a village, meaning we're on the right track, but we'll feel better once we purge them. Starting off, we show him the power of a dragon, and with the help of a strength elixir, shove one off the roof. Being as far away as we are from most of our foes, they spend their turns dashing towards us and doing whatever god forbidden tactic this is. Unfortunately, it means we don't get to finish off said goblin, so we settle for breaking the ladder. Even then, they're still free to blast through the floor, walls, and roof of this entire building to hit us. This must be a fellow god blessed. Either way, we don't have much of a choice but to spend this fight taking out all their allies first, until eventually they make a greasy comeback into our reality. To make matters worse, as we try and reach her, this sleeping bugbear joins initiative and immediately starts teleporting after us. But at the very least, we get the booyag, and then we start getting clobbered by the bugbear. However, with just 2 enemies left and our supply of healing potions, we're never in too much danger, and we wrap up all the reality warping shenanigans soon enough. As a reward for our efforts, Scratch decides to join us in our travels for good. And less importantly, we also get level 3, granting more spell slots including level 2 spells, though none are extremely notable for our goals. Continuing the exploration of this little village, we stumble across more goblins torturing an innocent gnome. With the help of one of our new spells and our intimidating new hat, we're able to scatter him to the wind and free poor old Barkus Root, who seems to be a fellow adventurer. And that's not the only thing we find in this village. There's also a hidden necromancer's laboratory underneath the antiquated alchemist's abode, wherein we find a terrifying tome named the Necromancy of Thay. Naturally, Lathander would want us to destroy it, but out comes pouring sentient shadows who hit real dang hard. So we throw on a sanctuary to make sure we don't get mobbed, shed some light on the situation, heal up, and once we're ready, fire back with the Radiance of the Dawn. It fails to kill any of them, but it does weaken them, and their retaliations fail to connect thanks to our 19 AC and warding flare, meaning we can finish off one of them, get blasted in the face until we almost die, recast sanctuary, heal up to full, then take out the last 2 with guiding bolts. Certainly a bit touch and go, but we feel closer to our god than ever, and in this moment of closeness, he guides us towards one of his allies who is supposedly in this crypt. To get to him, first we've got to scare off a few grave robbers, accidentally alert the rest with our poor acting skills, only to find them inside situated for a perfect radiance, letting us meld the boorish body snatchers until there's only 2 left who get some very fiery final moments and follow suit. But hey, at least they're already in a crypt. Things are never simple though. As Midas's search for our mysterious ally reaches its conclusion, a whole host of skeletons come to life surrounding him. Thankfully, none of them are particularly difficult to deal with, each one going down to just a single bonk on the head. And in the room at the end, we finally find our newest ally, strangely enough some sort of undead, but we can practically feel the divinity flowing off of him. He asks a few ominous questions, says an even more ominous farewell, and then just kinda hangs out in camp and watches us sleep from here on out. Since that's out of the way, we can get back to searching for the goblin camp and find it pretty quickly, only to get assailed by a mind-shattering migraine right as we're about to enter. An attack by the Absolute trying to force us to obey their 3 chosen, but before things get too bad, a fellow cleric shows up with this fancy artifact to rescue us. Unfortunately, she's very obviously a Sharon, not someone we'd get along with, so out of respect for her saving us, we simply tell her to bugger off. Inside the camp, we get into a bit of a disagreement with a not so kindly gentle goblin named Crusher, one that gets sorted out rather quickly with a few rays of fire, but a light from on high directs us towards a valuable ring he's got, so we follow him outside the camp to jump him, only for the Sharon to strike us while our back is turned. But that doesn't go particularly well for her. Either way, the lesson is learned: never turn your back on a Sharon. At the very least, we do get the artifact that protects us from the Absolute. And after working our way through Crusher's semi-immortality, there's a lot of God blessed around here, we also managed to get Crusher Crusher's Ring, a handy little trinket that we'll be wearing for a bit, increasing our move speed by 3 meters. Once Midas gets inside the goblin camp proper, we immediately stumble across an innocent being tortured. Naturally, this cannot stand. Before one of the goblins reaches the drums and alerts the whole camp, we manage to take that out too. Since there's a handy dandy pit nearby and it's just a few guards, we really don't need to worry as we free this poor fellow from the Druid Grove and send him on a secret path out of here. Our business in here ain't done though. Elsewhere inside, we find Roa Moonglow, a merchant who sells us the Bow of Awareness, a simple +1 short bow that increases our initiative by 1 as well, which helps us as we find yet another poor imprisoned friend from the Grove, Volothamp. Freeing him is just a matter of whacking his guard and making plans to meet back at our camp later on. When we do, he believes he has a solution to our little illithid problem. Since he's a fellow God-blessed, we decide to put our trust in him, though a moment later we're not as confident as we used to be. At the very least, he is nice enough to give us an invisibility-seeing eye before sprinting full speed away from the 7-foot-tall mass of glowing golden muscle he just crippled. Continuing on, seeing just how many folks there are still in the camp, we decide to play it safe and gather information, starting by breaking into one of the goblin leader's room, running past one of her guards, and finding a secret passageway leading us into the foreboding sunless Underdark. But where there are shadows, we must illuminate it, a task made easier as we arrive in a temple devoted to Solune, a friend of Lathander, and she provides us with the luminous armor for our quest. 15 AC medium armor that makes either Midas or his enemies emit a radiant shockwave whenever we deal radiant damage, applying radiating orbs which decrease the likelihood an enemy will hit us for each turn remaining up to 10. This gets very quickly silly and if stacked consistently amounts to an extra 10 AC. Without the sun's eyes on us, we do need to step a bit more carefully as we blast a Minotaur, find a super neat sword that occasionally glows, and thankfully find a safe haven in the form of a Myconid colony. As soon as we enter, we find a deep gnome in deep danger with Dwergar poison coursing through her veins, something we're easily able to fix as a cleric. Unfortunately, the rest of her clan have been kidnapped by the same Dwergar slavers that poisoned her, something we intend to correct, and she gives us a pair of spiffy kicks that she stole from them in order to help. Before we can head over there though, we find a scholar and mention our parasite problem to him, only for him to summon over a friendly mind flayer to take a look at us. Omeluum does a quick once over and lets us know he can help remove it, but he does need ingredients for a specific potion first. So we do a quick hop on over to the local arcane tower, break inside the back door, disable the security measures, grab all the plant bits that we came here for, read up on our classic literature, accidentally befriend a killer lightning powered robot, and reach level 4, granting another cantrip for which we take Toll the Dead as a way to do a bit more damage, and our first feat, a simple ability improvement, bumping our wisdom up to 19. Then we head back to Omelum, who makes the concoction for us to drink, which sadly only makes our tadpole stronger as we try and crush it. It would have been nice if it had worked out, but at least the merry mind flayer is apologetic enough to sell us his boots of stormy clamor, making it so that whenever we apply a condition to an enemy such as radiating orbs, we also apply 2 turns of reverberation, reducing enemies' saving throws and with enough even having a chance to knock them prone. Worth mentioning, damn near everything counts as a condition, even for some reason stuff like casting Sanctuary on ourselves. After grabbing these nice boots, we head to the beach where the Dwergar were last spotted and spot them ourselves. As it turns out, their boss is looking for the same boots we were just given, so we take the opportunity to sail to where they're stationed to deliver them. Don't worry, we'll be back for these Dwergar later. But first, when we arrive on the other side, we meet the ever-charming Elder Brithfar, who informs us the absolutist in charge here is trapped in a cave-in with all their gold. Gold that he wants. So we agree to help the slimy slaver for now by killing the scrying eye in preparation for freeing Nier. However, we do get a little bit distracted while looking for explosives by finding a neat little shield mold, and then Midas runs into a whole bunch of devils just dying to be put down. Starting off, we use Radiance of the Dawn to weaken all of them, then move far enough away that most have got a dash to get over to us, with the only attack made being redirected by our flare. Back to us and we blast them with burning hands, only to keep kiting thanks to Crusher's Ring. Rinse and repeat the kiting for a little little while until we accidentally get some Dwergar involved too, a good thing since we don't mind using them as meat shields. Plus, it frees us up to not have to worry about kiting, so we can focus on cleansing them from this plane. Curious about what we can do with this mold, we get searching around, finding some animated suits of armor who very quickly get introduced to the wonders of gravity and lava, and find some mithril ore right behind them, no doubt something we can use with our mold. Good thing there's a handy dandy massive adamantine forge right here for us to craft it with. All we gotta do is pop in the resources, lower the platform down to the lava, and hit the valve from a safe distance to get things started. Midas is extra glad he's not anywhere near that lava when a massive adamantine golem pops out of it too, who very kindly stops right on top of the platform that the hammer is set to fall on. Upon dropping it on him though, murderous magma methods come pouring out of the woodwork, some of whom come up to us to make our day miserable. Since Midas is juiced up on a strength elixir and has innate fire resistance, it's pretty easy to alley-oop them down to our metallic mate who finishes them off for us. Then it's a matter of simply throwing this handy dandy returning pike down on him for a small eon while he angrily pounds his fists together till the old rust bucket is dealt with. For our efforts, we get the adamantine shield, a shield that grants crit immunity, lets us shield bash melee opponents, and when folks misses with a melee attack they get sent reeling, which of course triggers our boots while working with our radiating orbs to make it even harder for them to land a blow. Now that we've got even better defensive capabilities and bombs, we bust open Nir's cave-in and finally out comes the man of the hour, immediately killing a slave minding their own business and making us even more happy to signal Brithvar to get this show on the road. Starting off, we use Radiance to injure a few of them, followed by skedaddling back in the hopes the slavers murk each other, something that more or less comes to pass as slaver slaughters slaver, Elder Brithvar gets mind controlled and whacks a buddy, then gets mind controlled again, followed by more allies joining us back on our turn. Thanks to our shield, we now have the pleasure of seeing folks fall to reverb upon missing us, then free Brithvar with a scorching ray, and finally summon a sacred weapon to put in some work. As the fight rages on, unfortunately, first kill goes to the opposing side, but Team Far, that's the opposite of Nir, gets revenge a moment later. Try as the enemies might, however, they simply can't keep up with the combined strength of Midas and the crew, as our allies begin to destroy our foes with the occasional help from our hero. Before too long, the last of Nir's goons go down, and we're free to show this damnable drow just how vulnerable to sunlight he really is, taking him down in just a few rounds. Once he's out of the way, we convince Brithvar to leave the slaves behind lest we get in a tussle ourselves, and he mentions a place called Moonrise Towers in the Shadow-Cursed Lands, where supposedly the Absolute is located, but we'll need to get stronger before we head there. Speaking of, shortly after, we also managed to reach level 5, granting Destroy Undead to upgrade our Turn Undead channel divinity to basically just a worse version of Radiance of the Dawn, and more importantly, granting 3rd level spell slots with spells like Fireball from our domain spells and Spirit Guardians. Fireball is obviously always a good bit of damage, but Spirit Guardians is the real star of the show, with its repeated radiant damage destroying any who get near us while triggering our luminous armor. Now that we've saved the slaves, we head back to the surface where we're strongest and have a quick chat with Priestess Gut, playing along that we're one of her allies before isolating her in her quarters. After precasting Spirit Guardians, we blast her with Scorching Rays to kick things off, saunter into her to damage her with our Glowing Guardians, and summon a spiritual weapon. Midas can't quite get her down before she calls for help though, meaning right as our weapon swings, a small horde comes zooming in. We're not the slightest bit worried though, as simply starting our turn kills Gut, and waiting until the remaining foes combined with a Radiance of the Dawn slaughters the rest, with the unfortunate side effect of pissing off the nearby merchant. But we simply get out of dodge and give him time to cool off. When we come back a moment later, we mainly focus on taking out the little groups of goblins scattered throughout the camp, which at this point is easier done than said. Then we talk to the second of our goblin leaders, Minthara, another drow who's choked about being unable to find the druid grove. So we give her what she wants, showing her exactly where it is. Since she excitedly zips onto this rickety bridge to organize a raid, we shoot it out from under her. Then a sudden flash of light from Lathander commemorates the moment, and now only one leader is left. Before we approach Dror Ragzlin, we make sure no reinforcements will be able to come to his aid with the help of our brand new fireball. Once we're ready, we get a sneak attack surprise round on Dror and his Drorlings as per usual with Spirit Guardians active, letting us immediately wade into the middle of the group, show off the glory of Lathander with Midas's resounding radiance, and summon another spiritual weapon, leaving just 2 enemies. Only one of them gets a turn before we do, but they use it to Void Bulb themselves and Midas into the spider pit below, dying in midair to our Spirit Guardians, which switches the turn to us as we're falling, causing our turn to instantly end when we hit the ground and fall prone. I genuinely couldn't say if that was the smartest or dumbest goblin I've ever seen. Either way, we survive till our next turn where we just sanctuary ourselves until we can get out of here. The spiritual weapon does suffer for it, however, and on our way out we bump into the aforementioned spiders who aren't particularly happy to see us, but they're a lot more pleased once we open the door, since now they get to duke it out with the man who's kept them imprisoned this whole time. Not that it goes well for one of the 8-eyed escapees. While Midas is hiking up to the high ground, Dror goes charging into the pit and uses an ability to de-aggro both the remaining spider and himself. I guess he realized the error of his ways. And when we kill the last of his goons, combat just kind of ends, and he's okay with it. So we have a quick chat with him, and it starts a cutscene of him trying to speak with a dead Illithid, complete with his dead goblin goons and Midas back upstairs. Truly, the Absolute has blessed this warrior with reality-shaking powers. He's even a little bit shocked as we attack him yet again. Thankfully, it's way easier the second time around since there's no gravity or goons to worry about. We just spam spells on him until he's low health, while he does not enough damage to worry us, and then we get him with our flame breath. After a brief celebration with the tieflings who are now free to leave the grove, Halsin the Archdruid shows up to tell us more about Moonrise Towers and join Withers in our camp for the foreseeable future. And though we've got a lot to do before we head there, the first thing on our list is investigating the mountain pass as Lathander's light guides us towards some unknown power there. Along the way, we meet Lady Esther, who informs us Gith invaders have taken over and corrupted an abandoned monastery of our Morning Lord. As little as we like that, we also don't like the fact that she's trying to get us to kidnap their unborn children for an experiment. Since our master is the Lord of Birth and Renewal, we make sure she doesn't have the chance to kidnap any more children. Something hold person and inflict wounds together makes incredibly easy. From her, we get the Periaptive Wound Closure, an amulet that'll be sticking with us for a long time to come, which maximizes any and all healing we receive. Continuing on our way to the monastery, we grab this important looking key from a bird, and upon arriving, find the Gith are just as curious about the Absolute and its shenanigans as we are, corralling Absolute cultists deeper into their territory. The key we picked up a moment ago lets us get in through the back door, and an Invis potion hides us from the guards. Once we're actually inside, we feel right at home in Lathander's territory, and they seem to think we belong too. But we can feel Lathander pulling us upstairs to investigate something there first, and sure enough, we find a room with ornate pedestals. Divine knowledge lets us know on each of these goes a specific type of weapon, a battle axe, warhammer, and mace respectively, causing a hidden alcove to open with a holy Dawnmaster's crest inside. That's not the only holy object we find up here. We also grab the Holy Lance Helm from a chest, our brand new Forever helmet, because this makes it so when enemies miss an attack on us, something that happens frequently because of radiating orbs, they take 1d4 radiant damage on a failed dex save, triggering even more radiating orbs as a sort of feedback loop. Not to mention, failed dex saves happen more often due to reverberation. But that's not the real reason our Morning Lord has guided us to his monastery. To get to that, first we need to get access to the innermost sanctum, and that means ignoring our untrustworthy dream visitor and showing the Gith our mysterious artifact, thereby gaining entry to where their leader is stationed. And while we do want both information from him and to clear him out from the temple, that's a later problem, since right now we loot one of the fancy barrels in here to grab the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, making any thunder, lightning, or radiant damage also apply 2 turns of reverb, further working with all our gear. Then we sneak over to the corner of the room where our buddy in the sky reveals a hidden passageway after turning each of these statues to the right spot, followed by navigating our way past a few trivial traps to finally reach the blood of Lathander. This is why we were led to the crest earlier, to disable any countermeasures so Midas can grab a physical piece of his deity to join us in our journeys. Our brand new +3 mace sheds holy light that blinds nearby fiends and undead, lets us cast a single use sunbeam once per long rest, and gives us more or less a second life in the form of Lathander's blessing. Now at last, we're ready to purge this land of evil for good. Starting off, we head towards the swamp south of the blighted village we were in earlier, since wicked vibes are emanating off of the place. Sure enough, 2 steps in and we find Auntie Ethel being confronted about stealing the sister of these 2 young men. And when we try to shed some light on the situation, she disappears in an ominous puff of smoke. The young men go running after her ahead of us, much to our chagrin, only for them to be dead on the ground by the time we catch up. Now we've definitely got to illuminate these mysteries. Once we make it to her cabin, we find the missing girl in question, but before we can get her to safety, Ethel teleports her somewhere far away from the sun so we can't sense her, revealing her true form to be a horrendous hag. To make matters even worse, as a showdown with her kicks off, she makes it overcast, while also summoning her red-cap minions to ambush our powerful priest. At the very least, they're all clumped up, so we make a couple miniature suns with a speed potion to kill all but 2. They're left dashing towards us as we take cover, but while Midas's back is turned, the cowardly hag zips away from him, leaving us to clean up the 2 remaining floundering fae with a few more spells. Heading into the basement, we find those aren't the only bodyguards the hag has, with some poor souls being corrupted to serve her wicked ends. There's little we can do for them now but send their souls to our boy in the sky, and try to not enjoy it too much as they miss attacks against us only to immediately fall prone, or as they just shove each other around to desperately try and avoid our spirit guardians, not that they actually manage. With the only remaining obstacle between Mayrina and Midas being a cage, we down an invis potion in order to free her. Right as the invisibility seeing eye we got reveals a hidden Ethel lying in wait, so naturally we blast her with the concentrated power of the sun to kick things off. She doesn't care much for that and splits off into a bunch of clones, all just as capable as she is. So to make sure they're just as incapable as she is, we run into this room and shut the door, since for some reason she can't actually open it. Then it's as easy as popping our head out and shooting her once each turn before shutting the door until she starts begging for her life, insisting that she has ways to come back from the dead, and offering a way to become even more powerful if we let her keep Mayrina. Now Midas is no fool, so we certainly won't give her the girl, but we see no reason to not take the power as well, increasing our wisdom to a whopping 20. Turns out Ethel was offering to bring Mayrina's husband back from the dead in exchange for their unborn child. A tragedy no doubt just waiting to happen, and while we can't offer her the peace the young mother deserves, a cleric of Lathander can always promise that a new dawn will come. Unless, of course, you're a filthy slaver that hasn't quite gotten the memo that they're not welcome anywhere near Midas Goldcrest, especially if they're filthy slavers that desecrate the dead while they're at it. We're pretty dry on our AoE spell slots unfortunately, but we do use bombs to narrow out the horde, only to kite the survivors all the way back to the Myconid colony where only Omeluum and Blurg get involved. If you can call Omeluum teleporting away to God knows where, turning Blurg hostile in the process, getting involved. Before things get too violent, at least Blurg also teleports away to some unknown location and we're free to finish off the Dwergar. Shortly after that, we go to clean up the upper areas of the monastery from all the squatters and dangerous monstrosities, find a few fiendish gnolls by the road and properly avenge Scratch's old master, then clear out some Kuatoa hiding in the Underdark worshipping a false god of murder to properly get up to level 6, giving the super duper powerful feature that is improved warding flare, letting us use our warding flares on all of our many allies. Yeah. Okay, but at least we also get another channel of divinity charge, which means twice as many radiances of the dawn. With that acquired, we tell Sovereign Spa the Underdark is a safer place to be now, and he rewards us with bliss spores, granting a 1d6 bonus to all our rolls till our next long rest. Then we're last off to remove some squatters from the Rosymorn Monastery. Yet when we go to chat with their Inquisitor before we can get answers, their false god Vlakith shows up doing her best to imitate the splendor of our own deity. She demands we go inside the astral prism we've been carrying around and kill the dream visitor that's been trying to distract us this whole time. Midas ain't too happy about following a false god, but we need to have a talk with this visitor anyways, so in we go. At last we're able to meet this figure face to face, and they are not pleased about it one bit, but that just makes us feel even more confident. Unfortunately, all we really learn is that she has some sort of secret power that Vlakith wants for herself that prevents us from becoming becoming a Mind Flayer, which is about what we knew beforehand, but hey, at least they gave us a bless that lasts till our next rest to help with the ensuing fight. To add to our prep, we also summon a rather talkative Quasset to join us using a scroll, down a Bloodlust Elixir, precast Spirit Guardians, and down a Speed Potion before heading out, immediately sending the invisible Quasset to get a surprise round on one of their Ardents, who we walk into right after, then fire a Sunbeam across the room, killing both Ardents, and triggering what Wargaz is a legendary action, but with all of our Radiating Orbs, they can't really hit. So we're free to fire off not one but two whole Radiance of the Dawns, then switch to a Psychic Resistance Elixir just to be safe. The friendly Quasset gets annihilated instantly, and we roll a crit fail on our concentration, taking a couple nasty hits from the archer, forcing Midas to heal up with a potion, continue to ignore the Mind Claws, which only make it harder for themselves to hit with each swing, and recast our Guardians, killing the archer and almost getting the swordsman, before running behind this door and shutting it, leading to the Inquisitor running up to said door, taking damage, and instantly deciding he wants to hide in the corner. If only his poor lackey had the foresight to do the same. Blasting the head honcho with a fireball only leads to his magic item retaliating and breaking our concentration again, so we cast Sanctuary until we can get back up and running. But clearly he's caught on to our strategy as he teleports around the area seemingly at random. Once we get it active again though, we're pretty much in the clear. The Mind Claws destroy themselves against us, and Wargaz himself can barely stay standing as we pelt him with inflict wounds. Even when he does stand up, the orbs make him miss easily, and we simply walk into him to finish him off. Not wanting to fight the whole Kresh and risk the lives of their children, we take the back door out, hoping the message is sent and they clear out. And with nothing left to do in the wilderness, we head towards Moonrise Towers, hoping our earlier statement is true and this Cleric of Lathander can promise a new dawn for these lands in such desperate need of one. At last, Midas Goldcrest arrives in the second act of his journey, the Shadow-Cursed Lands, a place he's sure Lathander wants him to heal. But before we go too far in, we cast protection from evil and good, mainly because we're worried about the evil part. Sure enough, we encounter some Harpers with a general good life advice just down the road, and as we step out from behind cover to introduce ourselves, Harper Jonas gets jumped by a shadowy specter, turned into one in his own right, and our first fight kicks off. We get a chance to watch our improved warding flare completely fail, then we use our Radiance of the Dawn to kill one shadow and almost slaughter most of the rest. Though some nasty hits do come towards both our allies and ourselves, our Holy Lance Helm sheds some light on the situation, making this even easier. A Harper thins down the herd, and we get to blast out another Radiance, taking out two more. When it's back to the enemies, Jonas obliterates himself against our helmet, and the remaining shadows do their best, but it's becoming pretty clear that this is not going their way. After a couple more rounds and a couple meaty hits, we show them that Lathander difference. Our new allies, seeing how valuable Midas would be in this dark, tell us about a safe haven nearby. Indeed, just down the road we find the Last Light Inn, rather poorly named as wherever Midas is, there will never be a Last Light. Regardless, as we try to enter, the legendary druid Jaheira shows up to bind us in a few roots because she thinks we're a chosen of the Absolute. Thankfully, Maul from the Tiefling Grove is here to vouch for us, and Jaheira mentions she's quite literally been praying for us to show up, which certainly means we're alright by Jaheira, and if we're alright by Jaheira, we are alright by Quartermaster Tally, who sells us the Cloak of Protection, a cloak that gives +1 to both our AC and saving throws. But that's not all. As we explore the grounds, in the basement we find the Coruscation Ring, making it so whenever we deal spell damage while illuminated, which is always, we also inflict Radiating Orb for 2 turns, stacking them even faster. Now that we've gotten a lay of the land, we return to Jaheira and have a quick truth serum filled drink to earn her trust. As the conversation continues, we learn at last of General Ketheric Thorm, the leader of the Absolutists, and an immortal warrior returned from the dead who is now invincible. Well, we're pretty sure we can take him out somehow, especially with Jaheira's idea of infiltrating the towers posing as a true soul. She also tells us that we're not the only star in this dark sky. Isabel, a cleric of our old friend Selune, is just upstairs and ready to give a blessing. Not all feels right as we approach though. A warning from our god encourages us to precast both our Guardians and Sanctuary on Isabel. We have a brief, fun, cleric-filled chat with our fellow god touch and get the blessing from her to progress through the shallower parts of the Shadow Curse. With Selune and the Morning Lord working together, the darkness doesn't stand a chance. That is at least the working theory until Marcus shows up to rain on our parade, bringing with him a host of fiends as his attempt to kidnap Isabel kicks off. Starting off, he hits us with a little bit of a suck before running into our guardians and immediately slipping. So we blast him and one fiend with a sunbeam, summon our spiritual weapon to help out, and pass the turn to our enemies, who mostly fly around focusing on everyone else in the inn, but one does also fly up to us, only to hit the spiritual weapon, who's still in fine enough shape to whack Marcus in the dome and get him seeing lights. The Selenite herself goes out of her way to break her sanctuary, but at least pops us back up to full health. Especially nice since Marcus immediately bonks us back down to half health before falling prone as we start our turn yet again. Most of the danger is dealt with though, as we fireball him and the winged horror up here to oblivion, triggering bloodlust, letting our champ turn Isabel invisible to keep her safe. From here, we've just got to clean up the winged horrors while hoping not too many of our allies go gentle into that good night. Rest in peace, Roland. Thankfully, with the whole inn working together and Midas spewing sunlight like his life depends on it, Roland is the only casualty we face this go around. And now that we've got our brilliant blessing, we're free to talk to Harper Branthos, who's readying an ambush on a cultist convoy with means to travel the Deep Curse. We do get a little bit lost along the way to the ambush site and instead ambush the wrong group of wicked wrongdoers. Just a small group of miscreant measles waiting in the dark for waylaid wanderers. Unfortunately for them, they are melee only enemies who really struggle to get close to us, and when they do, they inevitably miss thanks to our radiating orbs. Some even jump directly into their death when they've had enough of the torture that is fighting Midas, and the remainders get seared to a crisp before too long. Right behind them, we find the luminous gloves in the chest, which makes it so whenever we deal radiant damage, we also apply 2 more turns of radiating orbs. At first, we use these somewhat interchangeably with our gloves of belligerent skies, but we do eventually settle on using the luminous gloves. As we work our way back towards the cultist convoy, we feel the presence of shadows lurking just beyond the light, so to invite them to a purging, we break these torches and out pop some cursed canines, who just get absolutely shredded. Once again, these are melee attack only enemies, meaning they just run into our guardians, gain 1 million radiating orbs, get incinerated by channel divinities, and eventually die just via missing us. Then we last catch up to our Harper friends, where they're lying in wait ready to pounce on a wicked god's vile abomination. Said abomination leaps into action and we're immediately averting crises. Then when it gets to us, we run next to the cronies to blast him with a sunbeam while summoning our spiritual weapon. The friends we've made along the way, well, a treasure indeed, are kind of awful. They get shredded by a cloud of daggers, set on fire by a goblin, generally need to be babysat like crazy, and eventually just start burning to death. Back on our turn, we even up the playing field a bit more with a Radiance of the Dawn alongside running next to any and all who are close enough. Thankfully, our allies seize the initiative, taking out 1 more, and our enemies fail to do the same in any meaningful way. Though Midas likewise fails to follow suit with a failed cantrip. Thankfully, our buddies take out the last goon for us, and now if we're counting the spiritual weapon, it is a 5v1, turning this into an absolute stomp fest, since wouldn't you know it, Karnas is a melee only enemy, so he too falls victim to the loop of whiffing attacks and falling prone, only to get absolutely blended. The one time he does try and walk away, he completely fails since Spirit Guardians is difficult terrain and all his movement gets used just standing up. Not to mention the odd time he spends his entire turn standing up. The poor Drider never stood even a fraction of a chance. From his corpse, we find their means of protection, a pixie-fueled moon lantern capable of staving off even the deepest parts of the curse. Of course, all light is meant to flow freely, so we let the pixie go, and in return, she gives us the relatively permanent ability to avoid the curse in all its power. And as we journey around the lands a bit more, we bump into a boatload of birds who are a wee bit shy of the sun. Shortly afterwards, we continue down the road and find ourselves at Moonrise Towers, where we can feel the evil emanating from all around. It's especially noticeable as we enter the main hall and find the goblins from the wilderness begging for their lives, though General Ketheric Thorm doesn't see the merit in keeping them alive. The sentiment, however, does appear to be mutual. Death, though, certainly is not, as it seems to stick a lot more to the goblins than our immortal general, who quickly saunters off afterwards, no doubt to commune with his ghastly god, leaving us to deal with the remaining goblins who clearly would much rather go out on their own terms. Then our magnificent minister heads upstairs to have a quick chat with the right-hand lady Zarel, who very quickly comes to trust us as we ask her to show what she's capable capable up, to which she kills her own bodyguard. If only all of our opponents were so incredibly incompetent. She even proceeds to tell us of an incredibly important relic Cleric wants somewhere beneath his ancestral family mausoleum. Gee, I wonder what that could be. Now that we know where the source of his immortality likely is, we set out to first find a way to lift the curse from this land, starting by stumbling across Gary and Goth, who immediately squares up against us when we don't give them as much gold as they would like. First thing we do is get Spirit Guardians going, effectively neutralizing this melee-only enemy, then run past our goons up onto the roof where we feel a bit safer closer to the sky. Unfortunately, the sidekick skulls can outrange our guardians, so we take the odd hit here and there, but most just dash into our spell, doing nothing else. So when it switches over to Midas, we're free to use a Radiance, taking out one, blasting away 100 of Gary's HP in the process before skedaddling further away. Rinse and repeat next turn, and we finish off the remaining ones too, which should set our foe's max HP to 7, but the darkness here is so powerful that it's at 207 instead, which means we've just got to slowly whittle away at them as they whiff their attacks against us over and over, almost get turned into a golden statue like we're in the Myth of Midas, break out of it a moment later, move a distance away so as to not make the same mistake twice in a row, and finish the job after way too many turns. Since it's clear there's a bunch of thorns lurking around the place, we pivot our near goal to purging them, and along the way we get in another fight in the center of town. It's just a small group of run-of-the-mill undead which are really no danger. The only way they can damage us is with a strength drain, but that just shows how bad Midas is at keeping concentration. Either way, with the Bower of the Sun in the palm of his hand, the shadows are obliterated, with the regular old shambling zombies following suit with a fireball and some measly cantrips, giving us free passage towards the hospital where we find the next thorn, a certain deadly Dr. Malice, in the midst of doing what any Sharan doctor would do, hurting instead of healing. He even goes so far as to insult the light of his poor victim's eyes, so Midas, absolutely enraged, gets into a theological debate with the sickening Sharan and manages to turn his own teachings against him, resulting in the doctor having his nurses practice their cruel craft on him. Just like that, another thorn is down for the count. And off his corpse we grab a loot with a peculiar light noting its presence. Regardless, we find the last monstrous thorn, Thisbald, waiting for us at the local tavern. And while the brew looks worse for our stomach than what just happened to Malice, we still do our best to down it and tell stories to the big man, since his stomach looks like it'll burst open if we just keep him drinking. Sure enough, our divine blessed blood makes our hero a drinking champ. Evil could never defeat the Morning Lord, not even in a drinking contest. To reward us, our god blesses us with even more power in the form of level 7, granting with it 4th level spell slots with bangers such as Death Ward and Wall of Fire. Death Ward is basically an extra last stand, which is obviously really good, only problem is I forget to cast it pretty much every day. And Wall of Fire is situationally another very good damaging use of our concentration, though rarely as good as Spirit Guardians, especially since mostly we'll just be using these slots to upcast said guardians. Since the Thorn family is no longer haunting the town, we take a brief pit stop back at the last light and find a flaming fist humming a tune in his sleep. To try and break him out of his trance, Midas shreds it on the lute like he did back when he performed in his old church band. The moment the man wakes up, he tells us of Thaniel, a boy who embodies the spirit of the land trapped in the Shadowfell, who can only be freed by Halsin. So we grab our druidic roadie and get him ready to set up a ritual, and while he gets ready, we do the same, summoning a couple ice mephits, a water elemental, our loyal friend Scratch, and a cold glyph of warding. Things kick off as Halsin jumps inside a portal to rescue the boy, and shadows start pouring out the wazoo to destroy it. First up, we down a speed potion, cast Spirit Guardians, and fire off a darkness arrow to block the enemy's sightlines to the portal. Thankfully, the first round passes pretty simply as our summons get whacked and whack the enemies in return, with our glyph blowing up some of the approaching horde. Before you know it, it's back to us where we blast the growing horde with radiance, triggering a bloodless elixir fueled ice storm and finishing off with a guiding bolt on a wraith alongside our spiritual weapon. Our summons keep up the good work, though unfortunately our last method goes down and the enemies dashing towards us are smart enough to skirt around the ice. Either way, our guardians finish off the wraith and a sunbeam shows maybe it's not a bad thing the enemies are moving single file past the difficult terrain. A fireball only cements this line of thinking, and with our final action we blast another guiding bolt before refreshing our speed potion. Of course, with both our spells and our summons, we're prioritizing any enemies who get close, which isn't made any easier by the fact the ice is glitched and the DC AC for our enemies to fall prone is 3, meaning a lot of them get way closer than we're comfortable with, but a Radiance of the Dawn and Spirit Guardians clean out most of them. A Darkness Arrow on the portal again ensures the archers won't shoot it, and a Cone of Cold finishes off a few more. One by the portal didn't get cleaned up by Midas, but Scratch is here to save the day. No more enemies are spawning at this point, and the stragglers do worse than nothing on their turns, leaving us to fry a few more back on our turn, and the following round, Halcyon returns with a boy in his hand as the shadows dissipate. Only problem is he's still got a corrupted missing half lurking somewhere in the Shadowcurse lands, so we set out looking for that bit too. On the bright side, he's not too far from where we are. Just down the road, in fact, we find Oliver, who teleports away after we try to convince him to come with us, kindly leaving behind a portal for us to follow, but before we do, we down a Peerless Focus Elixir and precast our usual. Immediately after we step in, we get blasted by Daddy. Oliver summons a bunch of lacking lookalikes, and Mummy, unable to sing her lullaby thanks to our elixir, just runs at Midas. Whenever we move too close to an enemy, Oliver's legendary action triggers, dealing lingering necrotic damage, but it's nothing we can't tank with some healing potions. Meaning for this fight, we run around trying to hit as many enemies as possible, blast them all with Radiance repeatedly, make sure to watch out for the spooky owlbear, and when we run out of Radiances, switch over to the tried and true Fireball. Just a bit longer of enemies swinging and missing and running into our guardians is all it takes to make Oliver's barrier fall down and a conversation strike up. Turns out the kid is just nervous, thinking this rebirth of his will make his other half not want him, but a priest of the Morning Lord knows that each dawn carries memories of the day before and is all the more beautiful for it. Just like that, Oliver agrees to rejoin Daniel, which means it's at last time to get working on the last part of this.
Ketheric Thorm must die.
That is, of course, after we obliterate a few more shadows in the basement of the Mason's Guild, grab a fun little knock scroll, and then head to the Thorm Mausoleum, where Raphael himself is once again waiting with what he thinks is a charming rhyme. In actuality, it is no doubt some trick to get us to do his dirty work in typical devil fashion. So we tell him we'll be seeing him on our own terms soon enough. Inside the mausoleum proper, we find a hidden passageway after clicking a few buttons, leading unfortunately to a wicked Sharon gauntlet laying beneath. An invisible wall blocks our path to the button we need to enter, but Lathander's light guides us by first having us approach from the east and then the south, granting entry to the rest of the gauntlet, where in the very first room a clandestine cloaker lies in wait, one that Midas sneaks up on first, kicking things off with, you guessed it, Spirit Guardians. It immediately spits out a whole bunch of clones, one of which frightens us at the first chance it gets. Being frightened isn't too annoying, except for the fact that we can't walk towards the main cloaker now, so we're left using ranged spells and praying it walks into us. Since it kindly obliges, things speed up, even more so thanks to a crit hit from our spiritual weapon, which really ruins the monstrosity's morale if its last actions are anything to go by. Next room over, we find skeletons, no doubt being controlled by Ketheric's necromancer we were sent after, Balthazar. But before we can chat too much, the room starts shaking and quaking, and out pops undead justiciars alongside portals that will summon even more of them. And not so fun fact, they apparently don't get blasted by Sunbeam, as Speedbot fueled Guiding Bolt works just fine though. Of course, even with us targeting them, more portals spawn alongside more Sharons, all of whom have Radiant Retort, which is why we don't have Spirit Guardians or the Holy Lance Helm on. At least our shield still knocks them prone in conjunction with Reverberation. The rounds get spent by Midas blasting as many umbral tremors as he can, all the various undead slowly whacking each other, and more portals and bad guys spawning. Eventually, we get blasting the actual enemies, and the last of our allies goes down, leaving us by our lonesome right as our speedbot runs out too. Not that we're really all that worried, since protection from evil and good keeps us safe from almost all of their attacks. But of course, when the first hit does land, our concentration instantly breaks. Well, that's okay, we were planning on switching over to Wall of Fire anyways, roasting and toasting any and all who saunter through it with the help of our fire acuity hat that we picked up earlier, alongside a few well-placed fireballs incinerating the others that make it past. And when we inevitably run out of spell slots, a cloud kill scroll gets used up to bring us home over the last couple rounds. Once everyone's out of the way, we're free to meet the bloated Balthazar face to face, who almost instantly blows our cover by detecting our divine touch. Thankfully, he doesn't put two and two together and instead tells us the super duper important relic is nearby before sending us on our way. We'll get to him soon, don't worry, but first First, we feel a powerful infernal presence nearby that needs some purging. With renewed resources, we sneak up on the Orthon Urgir, blasting him and his cronies with a sunbeam from behind, earning a surprise round on his goons, alongside a pile of bombs dropped in our face, and wait, we can talk about this. It's okay, Lathander's got our back and we're in the fight again a moment later, healing up with a potion and casting Spirit Guardians. Next turn, Urgir simply goes invisible, effectively wasting it due to our Guardians, and Midas hits the old Resplendent Radiance to add insult to injury. Even though we've got our usual gear back on, we do still take the occasional hit as we get surrounded by the myriad monstrous Maragons. And to give us a bit of a heart attack, Urgir marks us with his legendary action before throwing another pile of bombs at our feet, this time deciding not to instantly blow them up. The Radiance of the Dawn next round triggers the prior mentioned legendary action, dealing a good chunk but clearing out room for us to heal up and walk away from the bomb's blast radius. At this point, our Guardians are working in full force, mowing down folks every turn as we walk through them. Urgir can't hit us for his life, and with no more bombs to worry about one-shotting us, we use a speed potion to kill him even faster. A Soul Displacer Beast is the only remaining creature that could be a threat, but they're melee only, and you know how that tends to go. Once they're cleared out of the way, we see some rats acting rather oddly, and arguably more importantly, find an Umbral Gem, no doubt a part of Shard's tricksome games that we will not be taking part in. But that's for later. For now, we head back towards Balthazar and decide to crack open the vault door next to him, wherein we find the Callous Glow Ring, letting us deal an extra 2 radiant damage to any enemy that is fully illuminated whenever we deal damage, replacing our Crusher's Ring. Unfortunately, as we explore more, we find some more Sharons with an Umbral Tremor that silences spells, but we can just blast it from on high and give the Justiciars a similar searing experience as the last ones we fought. Not all Justiciars have been dealt with though. As we go to investigate the rats, one lonesome one mysteriously spawns and we sense the taint of Shar on it. So naturally we obliterate it and a whole horde come following after it, all of whom spawn and run to our Spirit Guardians faster than we can even see them coming, causing the very last rat to turn into the last Justiciar and the only living one we've encountered. He starts doing whatever the hell this is as a defensive maneuver, but even his wicked forbidden magics prove no match for Midas in the long run. Since we've cleared out all the Justiciars we can, we use the one Umbral Gem we acquired to get to the bottom of this place and the Nox Scroll we picked up earlier to skip whatever trials the evil god intended for us. Then we step into the dark and ominous portal that swallows all light at the bottom, and sure enough, it swallows our light too. When we wake, we see a massive prison and we sense a light not even the Shadowfell could quench waiting for us in its depths. Unfortunately, Balthazar swoops in to try and get there first, so we race him down and a fight kicks off. He goes first and immediately blasts us with a brutal ray of sickness, but our precasted Spirit Guardians kills a goon, triggering Bloodlust, letting us use our Radiance before dashing closer to Balthazar and healing. All of his skeleton buddies are just food in a blender as they approach the Spirit Guardians, and for some reason the big man just spends his turn hopping away. Of course, we hop right after him on our turn, blast the battlefield with our second Radiance, and nuke some of the stragglers with a fireball. I think at this point the cronies just kind of gave up and started seeing if they could do tricks as they die to our Guardians. The Balthmeister blasts us with a cloud kill instead of following suit, even breaking our concentration. So we decide to mix things up, taking the opportunity to cast a wall of fire, which doesn't stop the skeletons from doing cool trick jumps as they die. Still, this nuisance of a necromancer continues to break our concentration, so we settle for whittling him down bit by bit. We are relatively safe from danger at this point, so long as we remember to always heal up, and before too long, both Balthazar and his few remaining minions get blasted to the great beyond, letting us do our pal Selune one more solid and free her daughter from Ketheric's enslavement, ending his immortality in the process. Yes, indeed, just like that, Dame Aelin, our newest celestial comrade, is reborn and is ready to join us in the fight against Ketheric. And wouldn't you know it, for freeing her daughter, Selune convinces Lathander to juice us up to level 8, giving potent spellcasting, letting us add our wisdom modifier to our cantrip's damage for a bit more oomph. Alongside our second feat, Warcaster, which grants advantage on all of our concentration saves, ensuring we keep Spirit Guardians up even more, plus it also lets us cast Shocking Grasp as an opportunity attack. At last, we're ready to raid Moonrise alongside our many allies that we've made, and as the fight kicks off, the little lackeys lying in wait pepper our front lines. We charge into the midst of them with our guardians, unleashing a Radiance of the Dawn. Jaheira does basically nothing at all, and Zarel unleashes a black hole, slowing a whole lot of us in the process, setting us up for a brutal smite from a paladin, instantly breaking our concentration even despite our newest feat, while our backline gets blinded by a hungry Hadar. Back on Midas's turn, we simply heal up and recast our guardians, and this round goes much the same as the last one, with our side looking like lambs to the slaughter, Jaheira included. To continue the bad news, our light is once again quenched by a 1 damage bolt to the face, making us wonder if Warcaster is even working. Right afterwards, Zarel goes and we fail a wisdom save to her spell, turning us fearful, which just really shouldn't happen. At least we've managed to stack enough radiating orbs to make most of the enemies miss us. Plus, even though we can't do much but watch now as our allies die, our movement does autopath us into killing enemies passively, which isn't a big consolation as the friends we made along the way are now all corpses. Another round of autopilot goes on by, with the death toll racking up incredibly impressively for us not lifting a finger. When we finally get in control of our actions again, we wade into the midst of our foes to blast them with our second Radiance, then finish off Zarel with our Fire Breath, which summons reinforcements. Thankfully, they don't get to do anything this round, so on our next turn we use a flying potion to zip up to the high ground and blast an adept with Scorching Rays to build up radiating orbs. We have been getting peppered from the folks on the rafters all throughout this fight, but the really scary hits come from the Warden at this point. Keeping up our Scorching Rays from on high to ensure that most of our enemies miss their attacks, we are pretty safe however. Unfortunately, the same might not be said for Quartermaster Tally, who decides to join the fight rather late. Seeing that our favorite shopkeep might get murdered, we speed up the pressure, but so do our dastardly opponents. Tally herself ain't going down without swinging either. Before they get another chance to harm her, our guardians get the Warden, we fly down into the enemy midst, blast them with a Cone of Cold, followed up with a Fireball thanks to Bloodlust, and even use a speed potion to Sacred Flame another to death, leaving just one foe who instantly slips on the ice we made. Our guardians are out and we've got to work fast, so we spend our next turn double Sacred Flaming, but it's not enough, and Tally sadly gets blasted in the face and is perfectly fine. Rip Bozo. 'Twas a bit of a rough fight, but hey, at least Tally is here to pick over the corpses. There's a few more folks for us to blast to bits upstairs, but they really don't take too long. We even have enough time to pop a potion of flying and run up to the roof with our existing guardians from that fight still active. Cleric ain't feeling too hot now that he can't rely on a stolen god's blessing, and now that Midas is here, Aelin lands, drops a truth bomb on Cleric, and our showdown begins, with Aelin immediately getting smote. But then it's Midas's turn, and we zip into the midst of this foul assemblage, blast him with a Radiance, then follow up with a spiritual weapon. Sestera the Necromancer does, however, blast us with a Fireball, triggering Kethric's legendary action, which also blasts us. Then we immediately lose concentration to one of the needling Necromites. At least a few others get knocked down when they miss us, which actually is kind of a bad thing because they turn into these skeletal cocoons which hatch before we get a turn and explode upon doing so, getting us low enough for Cleric to smite both Aelin and us into our death. But Lathander's got our back, and when we recast Spirit Guardians, Cleric gets knocked prone, our Bloodlust triggers on a Necromite, letting us use a Sunbeam on Sestera, and we heal up with a potion. The Necromancer gets her revenge with another Fireball, and Papa Thorm spends his turn sauntering on over. All we need to finish off this foul Defiler of the Dead is Scorching Rays. All it takes for the Thorn Patriarch is a Fireball to the face and some Spirit Guardians to the knees to send him straight into a cutscene. But the wicked deity that is the Absolute proves itself at its most powerful in cutscenes, knocking out Aelin once more and teleporting both Cleric and Aelin somewhere deep underground where the sun can't reach. The Necromites at least are easy to send back to an eternal rest, and it sure ain't hard to find the giant pit we need to jump into to track down the Absolute's general either, landing us right in the middle of an Illithid colony, which is chock full of roaming intellect devourers for us to slaughter, a small horde of undead to absolutely melt into puddles, and a bit of a puzzle to solve that rewards us with a brain in a jar that we can plug into this here machine, letting us talk to it via a disembodied head. They are begging for us to purge them from this plane after ages of suffering as a toy for the Illithids, and naturally we oblige. In the process, they grant us the Githzerai Mind Barrier permanent buff, which gives advantage on all intelligence saving throws. We also find a room full of pods containing both Mind Flayers and their victims, one of whom is our old friend Zevlor. So naturally Naturally, we let him out of containment, and it is just a straight up slaughterhouse for these poor illithids. I almost start to feel bad for them with how viciously outmatched they are. Almost. Unfortunately, they don't want to join us in the fight against the evil god that's orchestrated all their suffering, cause, well, I guess they have somewhere more important to be. Now, finally, we've tracked down Cleric, and we do a bit of prep, starting by upcasting aid to give us more max HP, summoning both Scratch and a couple of ice methods using a scroll, and downing a heroism elixir. Then we descend to the depths of this place and catch a glimpse of Ketheric's buddies Orin and Gortash, alongside a view of the true Absolute, an Elder Brain, no god at all. In fact, it turns out our true enemies are the Dead Three, wicked gods that serve as a foil to our Lord of Light. Either way, the other two chosen of the Dead Three vanish, leaving just Cleric and ensuring that at least he will die today. We throw down a flying potion for our canine companion and ourselves, then douse everyone in invis potions so we can sneakily fly into position. To start things off, we blast the Mind Flayer with some scorching rays, earning ourselves a surprise round and a yap attack from Merkel's chosen, but whatever his reasoning is, he's gotta go, so the fight resumes. Scratch immediately frees Aelin from her imprisonment, and our two methods get into combat by piling on the illithid, letting us use a speed potion to finish them off with Spirit Guardians. Then we fly down into the Intellect Devourers to weaken them before stopping in front of the K-Man himself. Our god-blessed buddy gets finishing off the Devourers, while Cleric, thanks to Radiating Orbs and Reverb, just misses a couple times before falling prone. Since he's not a concern while he's stuck on the ground, we fly up to his Necromites to damage them and blast the head honcho with a few Sacred Flames. The goons in general really are no concern for this fight at all, though in their defense, neither are our goons. Pretty quickly, it's just the old man laying on the floor by his lonesome, while Dame Aelin and Midas work together to blast him into another cutscene, wherein, even if we don't like him or agree with him, we can admire a man willing to sacrifice his life in service of his god. Unfortunately for us, that god uses his sacrifice to manifest a piece of his power, and very much so wants to kill us. Fortunately though, said god really can't hit us thanks to all the radiating orbs, so the fight kinda just becomes our guardians taking him down while we blast him and he swings and whiffs at us. His legendary action does occasionally frighten us inside his bone chill aura, which can be spooky, but so long as we keep him blinded with darkness arrows, we can stop him from getting too many chances to do that. Once he gets low enough health, he does start chomping down on the Necromites he summons, healing in the process. Which is honestly a little rude, because he can't damage us enough to make us worried, but we can't outdamage his healing either. Meaning we just gonna have to watch and do the best damage we can as he slowly but surely eats the Necromites, causing fewer and fewer to spawn each time until he eventually runs out. Then it's just a matter of whittling him down bit by bit with our favorite spell, emphasis on the bit, thanks to his damage reduction that comes from the armor Cleric was wearing. Don't ask me how that one works. Till eventually the first of the Dead Three have their machinations dealt with, and the material plane is all the more free for it. After defeating him, we get level 9, granting 5th level spell slots, aka even stronger Spirit Guardians, alongside some cool spells like Destructive Wave for even more whopping AoE damage. Plus, Aelin wakes up to get some sweet revenge, reunite with Isabel, who as it turns out is her girlfriend, which makes Selune's favor of her really click into place for Midas, and they ask to join us in our journey to the big city. A request our luminous Cleric happily acquiesces to as we finally set out of these shadow-cursed lands. Yet as we're leaving, we realize they'll have to come up with a new name for this place, and awfully quickly too, as a well-earned new day rises and the long journey to Baldur's Gate doesn't seem so long anymore. A little while after the dawn in the Shadow-Cursed lands, we find ourselves just a bit of travel away from the big city at last. Midas Goldcrest ain't one for midnight meandering, however, so we hit the hay ready for our journey to near its end. Unfortunately, these Githyanki have no respect for a proper sleep schedule and assault both our dream visitor and Midas while the sun is down along with our guard. They do get some pretty good whacks in immediately, but with the help of Sanctuary, we're not in any real danger as we sprint towards the portal that they're spewing out of. Arriving just in time to see the gruesome Gith break down our dream visitor's defenses, which is the perfect excuse to break out our favorite spell and quite literally get the jump on our foes, who are for some reason fighting friendly intellect devourers. Should we be offended that these devourers don't seem to be interested in our intellect? Well, let's just chalk it up to them not getting the chance. This first skirmish is pretty straightforward as Midas blasts with his radiance, the last brain cat gets clubbed, and the Gith fail to land even a single blow before we totally get them with our super powerful dragon dragon breath and not anything else. Then we head down to where our dream visitor is calling for aid, just kind of standing in the background as the Gith pummel the hell out of a mind flayer, all to rescue what we can feel is undoubtedly the true source of our protection. Turns out this mind flayer, known as the Emperor, is using said Gith's power to protect us, and if he dies, so do we. Surely this can't have been what our god intends for Midas, so we decline to work together. Either way, a fight kicks off, and if we don't kill the Gith, we're as good as dead. Thankfully, they start by focusing on the intellect of ours, letting us jump over to this one on the side and cast Command Halt in an attempt to slow them down, though only one of them fails the save. The Emperor proves why he needed to manipulate us to do his dirty work by getting absolutely clobbered, at least taking the brunt of the focus while we back on our turn use Sunbeam to weaken our foes further. The foolish Flayer even uses domination on a monk with stillness of mind, to which they show their distaste when they get the chance. But come next round, the first of the fist-fighting four flounders to an early fatality. We use our first radiance of the fight to blast a couple of them and get shredding their backs with our guardians, while summoning a spiritual weapon to boot. At this point, the enemy Gith are pretty ineffectual against us, since the first one we killed was the only one capable of hold-personing Midas, and the rest have too many radiating orbs, especially since another radiant combined with spirit guardians continues to shred away at them, not to mention the odd strength elixir fueled throw speeds the process up. However, when there's only one left, the traitorous Emperor uses the distraction to blast us with chain lightning, and before we can confront him, the last Gith uses our helmet to end himself. Unfortunately, it makes the Emperor think that we're on his side, but well, we do still need his protection for now, so we'll roll with it. Though before Midas goes to bed, he swears on the morning sun that we won't let this man suffer forever. For now though, we head back to camp, see that Aelin must have cleaned up around here, and call it a night at long last. The next morning, we head into Rivington, just outside the city outskirts, and get jumped by Yenna, a child who's lost her mother. After telling her we should go take her to the nearest temple, she lets us know that something odd has happened there, so we add it to our list. Our first stop, however, is for Drogher, a merchant in town who sells us the Hellrider longbow, essentially just a +3 boost to our initiative since we can't actually use it properly. He's also, as it turns out, a Sharin. First that lady defending the goblins in the wilderness, then the gauntlet in the mausoleum, now this guy? What's next? A secret underground temple hidden underneath a faux therapy office somehow installed in the city in secret? Surely not. That would be ridiculous. Next up, we swing by the Circus of the Last Days, wherein we delight the townsfolk with more of that music we picked up in our church band back in the day, then talk to Boney of Stony and Boney's Creations to commission a statue of Lathander. It arrives later that night, and they must have gotten confused since it looks like Midas instead, but either way, it gives the Sweetstone features perma buff, basically acting as a permanent bless. Anyways, that's for later. For now, we swing by the Open Hand Temple of Ilmater, another friend of our own deity, and as it turns out, one of his priests has been murdered, and this sham of a celestial cop is blaming it on an innocent refugee. To get to the bottom of this and set things right, we follow the very obvious trail of blood to a trapdoor, head into the basement of the temple where we find a secret exit, inside of which we find ballast murderers quite literally still here. Most of them are melee only, and you know how that one tends to go for folks, though one is a spellcaster. Not a particularly powerful one, mind you, but hey, it at least casted one spell before running headfirst into our guardians. As if we needed further proof, we find a key to a local room at an inn alongside the murder weapon itself. It's like that cop didn't even try to investigate. Sure enough, following our leads takes us to a secret room in the local flop house, and at last a proper list of old victims and future victims that this ballist cult plans to take out. Midas goes to report his findings to the Hollyphant, who's celebrating a job not done, and when presented with all the evidence we found, all she gives us is a pass to the lower city so we can uproot this cult ourselves. So down comes the drawbridge for our dear Dragonborn, letting him into Worm's Rock Fortress, which was closed for Gortash's coronation to Archduke, an event that we are forced to attend. Mainly just so he can yap to us about working together to kill Orin and then rule the brain. Obviously, that's not gonna happen, but we play along for now so we can take out his Steelwatch police force first. Of course, the first thing we do once we're in the city is head to the Stormshore Tabernacle, where we bust into the basement since the man in the sky lets us know he's got a present for us waiting in there. One that we send to camp to ensure we don't trigger the curse on the chest, all in order to grab the Amulet of the Devout, increasing our spell save DC by 2 and giving us 1 extra charge of our channel divinity for even more Radiance of the Dawns. We also take the time to head upstairs and donate properly to our Morning Lord, who in return blesses us with Vigor and Joy, aka the Anointed in Splendor permanent buff. This bad boy increases all of our saving throws by a +2, making us even tankier. Then we call it a night, say hello to our statue properly, adopt a child in the form of Yenna who still hasn't found her mom, and set out the next day ready to explore the city, almost instantly coming across a group of very obvious cultists lynching our old friend Volothamp. Even if it wasn't our old pal, Midas is never one to turn down the opportunity of purging a few absolutist scum from this world. After all, we get to test out our new triple radiant strategy, which proves to be very effective, almost killing all of them outright entirely. Once he's saved, our old wizard pal decides to join Camp Lathander again, this time for good. Since we're in the area, we also take a moment to pop into the Steelwatch Foundry to scout it out, finding that the Gondians working for Gortash are being made to do so against their will. A plan to save them begins to form, but for now we settle for stealing whatever isn't nailed down to inconvenience the boorish Bay Knights. Speaking of cultists, as we get wandering the city, we find a faux therapy office and our earlier thought strikes us again. To no one's surprise, the lady behind the counter has Radiant Retort, something only a shady Sharon would have. It does mean we can't rely on Spirit Guardians to obliterate them, but between Fireball, our tried and true spiritual weapon, and our brand new destructive wave, we've got other ways to decimate them. Not to mention, the armor of agility keeps us protected without radiating orbs, while the Steel Watcher helmet prevents them from blinding us with darkness clouds. Before we head down to the basement to find the leader of this place, we go to rest at camp and find Halsin losing his mind. And there's little we can do as he stabs himself. Oh wait, never mind, it was just Orin come to let us know that she's kidnapped him and will only let him go once we kill Gortash and then duel her to the death over the remaining netherstones. Wait a second, did she just stab herself to make that point? Well, a good thing Volo saw all that go down, because he gives Midas a book on how to kill Baal Slayer for some bedtime reading, granting Slayer knowledge, actually making it easier. Either way, the next day we head into the Sharon Temple awaiting us, kill their sentry Frederick, and then kick off the fight properly. Mainly, we just scorch them all with walls of fire and other fire-based spells, even though only one of them has Radiant Retort, their leader Viconia, who very much so likes to be in the center of the group. We also make sure to walk back each turn, so they're stuck dashing towards us round after round, and we're free to continually fill up this almost perfectly wall of fire-sized hallway. Even when they do get close to hitting us, we still have our warding flare as backup. Before too long, the vast majority of the horde is thinned down to nothing, and we're able to clean up Viconia and her last crony with a necrotic spirit guardians. Burning us, Viconia's walking fortress from her corpse, a +3 AC shield with a special damaging shield bash, but more importantly, it lets us reflect projectiles for a couple turns and gives advantage on saving throws against spells while giving spell attacks against us disadvantage. Plus, it's golden, so you know we've got a rocket. To make things even better, we also reach level 10, getting us another cantrip in the form of resistance, and we gain the power to call on our deity with divine intervention. It has a variety of effects, whether to create a weapon, heal you and your allies, or simply do a buttload of damage to your enemies. Unfortunately, we can only use it once, so we'll have to be smart about when we do. Not to mention, we find a Sharon mirror further in that we're able to sacrifice some knowledge to in order to get a permanent +2 to our wisdom. Of course, we'd never actually give Shar anything, since remove curse can just undo said sacrifice, but we're more than happy to poach power from the wicked god when we can. And now that Midas is fully kitted out, he also takes time to buy a new fit to properly show his devotion to his glorious glowing god. In touch with Lathander more than ever, our senses expand, letting us know this city is filthy with undead that needs purging, which is how we end up at Cazador Sar's palace. A vampire lord who isn't even trying to be subtle with his decor, or his door for that matter, which bars our way to wherever he's hiding. So to get to him, first we need to sneak past a dead girl's cursed corpse to read a dictionary, then watch a skeletal guard obliterate himself against us to steal his ring. After we throw open the door, we find a bloody room full of critters of all sorts, all under the vampire's control. Naturally, this means they've all gotta go, and most of them kindly oblige, with our guardians, a spattering of the rest get incinerated with radiance, and it ain't too hard to finish off the stragglers. Then we simply head into the nearby elevator, which takes us directly down to the profane vampire himself in the midst of using a wicked ritual to make himself even more powerful. And so, a massive showdown begins, with Midas going first thanks to a vigilance elixir. To kick things off, we cast daylight on our weapon to counter the vampire, then walk into his his legendary action, which damages way more than I was expecting. But thanks to a speed potion we had active beforehand, we're able to zoom across the arena and heal up. Just enough to avoid getting one-shot by the awfully rude Tsar, and his goons ain't hitting us at this point either. So when it's back to us, we recast Spirit Guardians, heal up another tad, sneak our way past the goons, down a necrotic resistance elixir, and take out the first ritual source, a certain zombie Astarian. Not that it actually stops the big lord from gaining the benefits from this source for some reason, that is to say increased move speed, an extra bonus action, more damage, and temp HP. To end our turn, we throw down haste scores, ensuring we don't go lethargic when our speed potion runs out. We have once again just enough HP to get us to next round, and if it wasn't clear already, the goons are nothing to worry about this fight. Our opponent seems to agree as well, since for some reason on our turn he uses a legendary action to kill his own guys. Stealing the extra bonus action for ourselves means we get to heal up a bunch before sauntering on over next to Kazi, breaking his concentration and ending our turn on a ritual source that passively heals us. At this point, the big guy resorts to swinging at us in melee, once again for no discernible reason, and it does not go well for him. It's not like he's out of spell slots either, he just seems to prefer this. Of course, even when he does try to leave, we're not gonna let him that easily. Soon, it's just Chatterteeth as his only goon remaining, and he just keeps using wisdom save based spells on us, which isn't very smart either. From here, we just continue bullying old Cazador, take a moment to incinerate Chatterteeth for propriety's sake, and finish things off with a Radiance of the Dawn. Things aren't properly finished, however, until we jab him in the heart in his coffin, and then use his staff to blow up all the poor spawn he's cursed throughout the years, sending them hopefully to somewhere better. Unfortunately, on our way out, we find the parents of said spawn, but they do understand that peace was the best thing Midas could afford them. Before we get to our next hunt, we take a moment to intimidate some local thugs, buy some Terrazul in their guild hall, which is basically a speed potion that you can use for free. Then we head into the Elfsong Tavern basement, clean out their rat problem lickety-split, head into the next room where we clean out their Githyanki problem even lickety or splittier, after which we head to the beach to bask in the glory of our sun, only to find a very rude drug trafficker who naturally also meets a similar fate as to all those who try and murder Midas under the full light of the sun, all of which serve to give us level 11, granting access to our most powerful spells such as Hero's Feast, which provides a whole myriad of effects, or, hear me out, we can just use the 6th level spell slot for even more spirits in our guardians. With all that out of the way, we can return to hunting heretics, continuing with the wizard Loroakin, who we hear has been hunting our friend Dame Aelin to use her immortality for himself. After confirming our suspicions, we decide to do him one better, coming back with a Deva summon, Spirit Guardians, and the daughter of Selune herself. Of course, we let Dame Aelin get a few licks in,
Flaccid.
and a showdown begins. Starting off, we get our Deva to oil up to make sure he hits more often, not that he seems to notice. Then we dash on over to give him a helping hand, summon a spiritual weapon, then pass it to the baddies, most of whom miss their attacks. The Loroakin himself at least dashes into our guardians before casting a mirror image. Aelin on her turn torches Loroakin's halfling henchman, who must have been getting paid really well while getting started on one of the elementals. Back to the Deva, and this time we get him swinging on Loroakin, triggering his elemental retort, which we're hoping uses his reaction, but we find out the hard way on our turn that it does not. Thankfully, the enemies seem insistent on being entirely useless, besides Loroakin, who fireballs Midas, the fireball-resistant golden dragonborn. No stress for our floundering foes though, cause wherever there is uselessness to be had, the Night Song is here to show off the upper limits of such cases. However, our other angelic ally makes up for it by putting an end to the only real threat on the battlefield. Since the remaining Myrmidons just damage us by swinging weapons, they're no issue to clean up, and Selune's daughter even puts in some good work herself, though she still can't help herself from stealing the final blow yet again, even at the cost of breaking her paladin oath and losing a piece of her. Continuing on, we get searching for the next source of undead in the city, and it leads us to this mansion wherein we meet Mystic Carrion, a mummy lord who is unfortunately immortal until we track down his organs. But now that we've met the man and know his weakness, our search leads us to this beach house, and wouldn't you know it, inside the closet is another undead undead, who of course we purge. Inside his stomach, as if by divine providence, is Carrion's heart, the only piece we really need to destroy to kill him, but we might as well weaken him further. Meaning off we go, finding ourselves in the cemetery, breaking into a mortuary cellar, letting us grab his lungs in this tiny jar. The last couple pieces we find by heading into the sewers, convincing a deranged sorcerer to not scorch us alive as part of his buddy's funeral pyre, then entering a passageway in the Undercity ruins, leading to a very obviously cursed room emanating with an undead stench, one that Midas activates by popping open a coffin and kicking off another fight. Triggering this ambush did curse us with spell rot, meaning we would take damage for every spell cast, but since we precast Spirit Guardians and Radiance of the Dawn isn't a spell, this fight is a breeze, especially because the many mummies love using Dreadful Glare, an ability with a DC 11 wisdom save to resist, something our 22 wisdom cleric has no problem with, plus we're still free to cast cantrips. Further in the room, our angelic friend bashes through a fake wall that we spotted, and we grab both the mummy lord's brain and his liver, the last two pieces that we needed. Of course, first we have the honor of blowing them all up and watching the fireworks. Then we're heading back to face the threat himself and find a long-lost twin brother along the way who decided to serve nature instead of Lathander. Anyways, uncanny lookalikes aside, we precast our spells as usual and go to confront Mystic Carrion at last. A shame for him that he's vulnerable to fire damage, and if we stay at a distance, his legendary action gets outranged. Not to mention, both him and all of his goons are insistent on trying to get Midas to fail a wisdom save, which just is not gonna happen. More fireballs certainly are, however, gonna happen. In retaliation, the Mummy Lord uses Explosive Cloud Kill, but a protection from poison that we precasted protects us from the worst of it, while his mummies dash into our guardians. From here, one more fireball takes out most of the baddies, and one more tick of our ghostly guardians takes him out, leaving just the big guy left, who we stick to like flies on carrion, slowly ticking him down over the course of a few rounds. And before you know it, the last major undead threat in the city bites the dust, leaving us free to finally return to the Steelwatch Foundry, break into the back room, and have a quick chat with Gondian Xander Tubin, one of the enslaved gnomes making the Steelwatch, who lets us know their families are being held hostage in a secret underwater prison, and so long as they're not free, the people here cannot rebel. Naturally, we get searching around the docks for any secrets, finding a locked warehouse filled with wargs guarding it, who are quickly cleared out to say the least. In this locked warehouse, there is also a secret basement lying under some boxes, and inside said secret basement, we find a secret submarine and its secret pilot, who we easily intimidate into taking us to the Iron Throne. Unfortunately, when we get there, Gordy decides to throw a temper tantrum and blow everything up, meaning we don't have a lot of time to save the prisoners. But we throw on all of our speed-based gear while summoning as many allies as we can, down a flying and speed potion, then enter turn-based mode and pre-dash as much as Dragonbornly possible. As things kick off, we send in our Deva, who as it turns out cannot use levers. He can, however, smack them to free people. Midas does not have this same problem, using his near limitless movement speed to zip around popping open levers, and his actions to help people tied down, including Omeluum, who is here for some reason. Regardless, we keep zipping around and find this prisoner who really wants to get let out, even to the point of walking through solid steel. Magical gnomes aside, we are able to free literally everyone on the very first round, and we spend future rounds using Omeluum, the Deva, and Midas interchangeably to mess with the pursuing guards who really don't care that this place is about to explode, meaning every single captive is successfully rescued, with not a moment to spare either. Now we just have to blow up the factory itself, which is something easier said than done. The revolution starts off well since our AoE is just so good, but the baddies do attempt to blow up all the Gondians, meaning we have to take time to disarm those bombs. Though at the very least, every guard on the top floor dies before they can kill any of our Gondian pals. Unfortunately, the Gondians decide this was too easy and wander outside into the roaming Steel Watch. Not to mention, they stand right next to the Watchers right as they're about to blow up, so we have to run in and physically toss them out, only for a different Gondian to decide to 1v1 yet get another watcher on the roof. Thankfully, the Guardians on the main floor finish off the second one, while we go on the roof with a thunder wave to somehow save all of these Darwin Award nominees. Downstairs, however, does not go nearly as well for neither the Guardians or the poor opponents who have the misfortune of getting in Midas's way. At the very least, not every Guardian meets a grisly fate, with two of them actually surviving, with no small amount of effort exerted from our hero. Seeing our heroics in action is enough for our Lord of Light to imbue us with the peak of our power, level 12, and with it our final feat, Tough, giving us 2 HP per level for an extra 24, setting our max to a whopping 123. Since everyone else is cleared out, we're free to head into the final room and face Gortash's Steel Watcher Titan. Although the only real concern in this fight are the Hellfire Watchers due to them living up to their namesake, as Hellfire is unavoidable and unresistible damage that hurts for a buttload. With Tough though, we always have enough HP and potions to heal up, and the Titan itself just kind of misses constantly. Spirit Guardians, Radiance of the Dawn, and a few cantrips are all we need to get the Hellfire Watchers themselves blowing up one by one. A similar treatment gets the Titanic piece of scrap metal deciding to do the same and just get this over with. With our dear friend Xander Tubin's help, we head back to the control console, run like our life depends on it because it does, and get outside just in time to continue the fireworks show. Now that Gortash's Steel Watch is no longer in the way, it's as easy as saying Radiance of the Dawn to fight our way past all of his henchmen hordes before arriving at the peak of his palace ready to throw down. He does get to blast us first with radiant damage no less, but when it gets to us we blow up his protective force field, get right up in his face, and top up our HP. To no one's surprise, most of the enemies spend their turns dashing to us, and the ones that do attack don't manage to connect. To Midas's surprise though, a point-blank Gortash actually does, but one of his defensive barriers malfunctions, giving him vulnerability to most damage types including radiant, so our turn gets even better. The goons continue to be a non-factor, though one of them does shove us around, and if Gortash is only going to be using dazzling rays, that doesn't concern us either. However, next turn when we incinerate all of his friends, he decides to go Super Saiyan, so with a bloodlust trigger we blast him with a sunbeam of our own, knocking him prone. The sole surviving thug from our last turn decides to expedite his journey to join his buddies, and now Gortash is melee only, which at this point you should know how that goes. We even intentionally trigger opportunity attacks to trigger reverberation to knock him prone, so he doesn't even get the chance to use his legendary action. His royal lowness can't even stay off the floor for a full round, and alongside help from his malfunctioning force field giving him vulnerability, we get some really brutal hits in to finish him off. That means Netherstone number 2 and our second of the dead 3's chosen are off the list. As our champion heads back to camp to recoup and recover, we also find a note from Orin telling us where to go next if we're to gain entry to Baal's temple and save Halcyon. And this is how we end up in front of Sarevok Anchev, a truly evil Baal spawn that wreaked havoc across Baldur's Gate in centuries past. We've got no idea how he's still alive, but if a champion of Lathander was born to do anything, it's put scum like him down. To start off, Midas runs into his ghostly goons and uses a Radiance, triggering the big man's legendary action, which teleports him next to us and delivers a guaranteed hit. Unfortunately, we don't have quite enough radiating orbs to make Sarevok actually miss us with any regularity, plus the cronies use Heal, Sanctuary, and Haste to buff him up even further. On our next turn, we continue to harass the ghost that's closest to us and find out the hard way that one of them has counterspell when they cancel our cantrip. As always, we top up our HP too. At least Sarevok seems more interested in running into our Spirit Guardians and keeping his Sanctuary up than doing anything useful. His buddies follow suit with a Warding Bond and a miss. This fight is mostly a battle of attrition, and everything we try to do just gets counterspelled, so we're mainly relying on Spirit Guardians to clean up all the goons over the next few rounds. As each of them goes down, the Baal spawn does get permanent buffs, including healing on hit, but he simply does not hit often enough for his health to trend upwards, especially when we start using command to make him skip the odd turn. Eventually, the poor sod realizes how desperately outclassed he is and quite literally jumps to his own death just to be done with it. In the next room, we find Valyria the Celestial once again, and as tempted as we are to leave the corrupt cop here, I doubt our god would think too kindly on it. Either way, using Sarevok's amulet, we're able to track down and open the entrance to Baal's temple, hidden fittingly in the sewers. Sadly, when we find Orin, she ain't too happy that we killed her dad/grandfather grandfather, and she takes out her rage on Halsin before transforming into some profane abomination and squaring off against us. With the help of a vigilance elixir, flying potion, and speed potion we took beforehand, we zip to the center of the arena and blast everyone in it not once but twice with destructive waves, knocking everyone performing her ritual prone, cancelling it out before it got a chance to do anything. Then we summon a spiritual weapon and pass our turn. Once again, the thugs here are absolutely worthless, unless they're fighting Scratch, who is also here but tragically not for long. Orin herself does start raising undead now and then, but they're melee only too, so yeah. While the head honcho is focusing on our goons and jumping into falling prone next to us, we decide to do the same and exterminate everyone on her side, so this can be a nice clean 1v1 between God-blessed. But as a melee only enemy who is prone to falling prone, this goes strikingly similar to how our fight with Gordhash went. She just can't do enough damage. The only real difference is we spew out Scorching Rays to trigger reverberation as much as possible. With the last of the dead three having lost their chosen and the final Netherstone in hand, we're ready to take on the Netherbrain, but first we've got one more thing to take care of. That, however, requires us breaking into the local Diabolus place in an attempt to search for a way into Raphael's House of Hope. Luckily for us, not only do they have all the ingredients we need to open a portal to it, but there's also a ritual circle already set up that leads right there. The moment Midas gets inside, we're greeted by the titular Hope, who we can immediately feel is almost a manifestation of the concept. One that is imprisoned here against her will, but she does tell us about a hammer within these halls that can break any chains. She wants us to sneak in and steal it, but in the face of a house of fiends, a cleric of Lathander does not sneak. No, instead we rip and tear and blast our way through, being mindful of their ability to reflect radiant damage once each by using necrotic guardians instead of our usual radiant. Indeed, as the forces of hell set out against us and find us unbreakable, one of the hell spheres that we've come across even tries to flee, finding that the locks put on to trap us in here have sealed its own fate just as well. We even come across a devil that looks an awful lot like Raphael himself, but he goes down all the same just as fast as everyone else. From his corpse, we grab a key that pops open a hidden safe, wherein we find a secret password that will let us get the hammer in the archives. All we need to do is kill our way over there, and it's ours for the taking. Of course, we first need to kill our way past Hope's prison guards too, but they're no concern. These spectators get dang near instantly incinerated, and the imps are all but one-shottable. Not to mention, all this is made easier since we don't need to conserve resources. That is thanks to the boudoir upstairs that restores all of them as much as we would like. Before you know it, Hope is free and Raphael is no doubt on his way. So naturally, we do a little bit of prep, casting every buff spell we can think of, including Aid and Hero's Feast to make our HP as high as possible, and making sure our Deva is here to join in on the fun. Not to mention, we also have Hope and Midas down Vigilance Elixirs, plus Flying and Speed Potions for Midas specifically. And not a moment too late as Raphael at last returns, joined by this lady and our old antagonist Yurgir. Just like that, our penultimate showdown kicks off. Starting off, the Deva triggers Raphael's opportunity attacks to eat his reaction. Then we cast Necrotic Guardians and with the help of Terrazul and Arcalis Glow Ring zip around, triggering everyone's Radiant Reflection. Also, it's not available when we sunder the Heretical using Divine Intervention, plus a destructive wave to deliver further mayhem and summon a spiritual weapon. Our Deva continues with a speed potion, zipping from soul pillar to soul pillar, whacking them to weaken Raphael. Yurgir for his part just kinda dips after taking one look at what we're doing. Meanwhile, Hope gets blasting with Divine Intervention herself, which for some reason doesn't get used up, so we use Terrazul and do it again. And still it doesn't get used up, so we use a speed potion and do it a third time, making it just the master of the house left, who certainly tries his best on his turn, though he can't help but watch as on our next set of turns we dismantle almost all of his pillars one by one permanently, and use our reflective shell ability to make his next turn even more worthless as he just shoots himself over and over. The last pillar falls to the Deva while Midas and Hope are busy sleeping off the speed and Terrazul, leaving the big man to flail about, resorting to melee only, something you'd hope he'd know better than to do. Alas, we're free to take the time to switch to our Radiant Guardians again and slowly whittle him down, even despite him deciding to blow us up again, we just have so much HP that we don't need to worry about it. Our angelic ally does seem to want to finish things up sooner than later nonetheless. After taking a brief moment to bask in a world without Raphael, we decide it's about time we head down to the sewers to track down the Elder Brain once and for all. It is rather large compared to the last time we saw it, and it's a little worrisome that it has the ability to pull us into its psyche, but we have the power of God and the Netherstones on our side, so what do we have to worry? Oh, well, that's not good. Blessedly, the Emperor shows up at the very last second to whisk us away to safety, not that it makes us like him anymore. In fact, we use the chance of being in the astral prism again to free Orpheus, much to the Tentacle Terror's chagrin evidently, as he decides to go off and join his arch-nemesis in willful slavery despite us. Orpheus ain't particularly happy to see us either, to make matters even worse, but he is at least willing to work together. And even further than that, he's willing to turn himself into a mind flayer in order to properly wield the Netherstone so we can defeat the Brain for good. All we need to do is fight our way past all of this, channel the Netherstones on top of the Brain, avoid the Emperor, avoid the dragons, and save the world. And worst of all, embrace public speaking to hype up all of our friends who came to join us in the final showdown. The speech evidently did absolute wonders as we inspire them into heights that Lathander would be proud of, and our buddies get to work in fighting past the small battalion in our way, buying us enough time to start climbing the Brainstalk right as the wicked thing takes off into the sky. When we get to the top, the Emperor himself, now thrall to the Elder Brain, is here to get in our way, and the final showdown kicks off. Starting off, we zip over to the crown with a Dimension Door scroll, use a Misty Step scroll to bait out counterspells from everyone nearby, then have Orpheus use a Globe of Invulnerability and get channeling the stones. We do have to resist a whole bunch of Mind Blasts that attempt to stun us in our tracks, but none of them are able to stop us. We are inevitable as the rising sun as we open a portal back into the Brain's psyche. Once inside, the Gith Prince starts stacking fierce perilous stakes on us, with each one increasing our damage by 15. So with 7 stacks of it, we're able to one-shot, okay, well, we would be if our cast animation didn't get cancelled midway through by his legendary action, but at least with 7 stacks of it, we're able to two-shot the Brain with Scorching Rays. Now that its psyche is sufficiently weakened, we command it to end both itself and all of its dastardly minions and plans alongside it, and wouldn't you know it, a light like the sun is what heralds its end. No light will be as warm as the real thing though, and now that at last there's nothing left to save, our hero can bask easy in its light, until a time comes where again the dark encroaches and the sun is needed once more. But until then, our hero is free to sit back and enjoy the sunset. Thanks for watching the end of another journey, folks. I hope you enjoyed this one. This build was an absolute delight and possibly my favorite one that I've played, despite it being just spamming Spirit Guardians. And as always, a special thanks to our storyteller tier members here on YouTube: OCanCan, Mark Rainbow, That Be Renee, Lumina, El Guardia, Ramon Standalone, Witch Amy, Shmentai Neko, and Miku.